this play will go under review.
What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for being here for this week's episode of Under Review, and a happy Tuesday evening to each and every single one of you. We are living in some fun times right now as Bills fans, as the Bills get revenge on the Baltimore Ravens on this past divisional matchup round. And I got to tell you, that game had me anxious for 4 straight quarters of just pure elevated heart rate and and just sheer panic, especially towards the later half of the game. But the Bills get it done and they move on to the AFC Championship to rematch against the Kansas City Chiefs, this time in Kansas City. And we are going to go over that matchup as well as talk about the factors that led to the Bills defeating the Baltimore Ravens this time around. And when I say we, of course, I never mean just me. I always have a guest on hand. And tonight's guest is a good friend of mine, a good friend of the show. You might recognize his face. He has been here before, and his name is Mr. John Helmkamp with the pointing finger guns. John, welcome back. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. How are you? Happy to be back. I haven't been long form on a mic in a minute, so I'm stoked to get back and chop it up with you and see your beautiful face again. And let's talk, man. We got some big time conversations to have about last weekend and the big one, the big boy coming up this weekend against Kansas City for what seems like the 1,000th time in a row that we've had to play.
Yeah. It was funny because there was a time, John, when like the Bills started hitting that stride with Josh Allen. He takes that 3rd-year leap. He starts developing. And I'm thinking like, wow, the Chiefs, we just haven't really interfered with them. We haven't really clashed yet, you know? Now we clash with them as an annoying amount for a team that's not in the same division. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, great. Well, here they are again. We have to deal with them again. And hopefully this time it's on the right side for us. But of course, that's a game you have to earn considering how good this team is and how seasoned they are in the playoffs. And I'm looking forward to talking about that with you further, John. But let's start with the divisional round and this matchup against the Ravens. One that, even though it got very tight at the end and there was certainly some plays given up, explosive plays, a lot of yardage given up, this was a Bills team that felt far more ready this time on both ends of the football, especially on defense, and ended up taking early control, getting a decent enough lead, which proved to be a massive factor and the difference in this game. So I just want to ask you, before we get deeper into the show, more specifics, your general thoughts on this Ravens-Bills matchup, what you liked and what you maybe didn't like.
Yeah, I think just general thoughts on it. The Bills brought their lunch pails, man. And that to me was just like one of the best things to see. They weren't over physical. They weren't, overpowered. It wasn't, they weren't over efforted. It wasn't anything like that where Baltimore could come out and impose their will like they do so many times to so many opponents, like they did way back in week 4. They showed up, and I'm pretty sure it was the opening kickoff was a hard hit from Buffalo. And I was just like, okay, like, cool. Like they showed up, like the tone's here. It's going to be physical. It's going to be a hard fought game. And it carried all the way through. There were times in particular where we felt like the imposers, and that was awesome. Like I loved seeing that, us be able to lean on Baltimore's defense. Like that was great to see. Yeah, we gave up some chunks. Lamar and Henry, they're going to get theirs at some point. But if you told me that we would hold Derrick Henry to like 87 rushing yards, I think it was, and Lamar was around 40. I'm not looking right at the numbers, but those are low numbers by their standards. You count that as a win. Like that, you did pretty much what you could hope to do against those guys in this game. You generated the turnovers. You did everything that you wanted to do, and you got the win. And we expected it to be tight, and it was tight, and it was right down to the wire, but we made more plays than they did and got the dub. It was great.
Yeah, and that's, you bring up a great point when you say they're going to get theirs, because I think what happens is when we get to the playoffs, the fundamental approach to how a lot of people end up viewing the defense, the offense, is that, if you're letting up, and this is going to get conflated with me sounding like I'm excusing it because I'm not. Rather, it sounds like people will be upset when they see Baltimore put up 25 points. They were averaging, Derrick Henry 5.3 yards per carry, and he gives up 84 yards, gets the touchdown. But when you say they're going to get theirs, it's because you're playing a team that's just as dynamic as you, right? The Baltimore Ravens, matchup wise, were very difficult for the Bills in general, and they have all world talent in Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So when you play these teams, at least in my opinion, and what I think a lot of people who may not feel this way, I would implore to start doing is just understand that these guys are going to get theirs, that is a reality when you play teams that are this good, that pitching shutouts or 9-point games, as awesome as it would be, as it's not an unreal, or I don't want to say it's not an impossible thing that could happen, I don't think is realistic. I think this team was there for a reason. This is a team that is capable of moving the football in a myriad of ways, and they did. However, I still find comfort in the fact that the Bills managed to keep them relatively in check, at least up until the second half, where things kind of started getting a little more intense, a little more unruly. But that for most of the game, the Bills were able to capitalize on mistakes, be able to score points off it, and for the defense to be opportunistic, which is something that even if they give up yardage, I have said they are very good at trying to generate the turnover and ultimately put the ball on the ground or force them to make mistakes. So it's good that you bring that up. And it's definitely something that when you talk about the narrative of this year, it feels relieving. And it's not because this is wanted for the Bills. Like, and I'll flip this back to you, but when we talked about all the MVP conversation and the back and forth with Ravens fans and, the discourse that became extremely toxic and negative nonstop on the app, to see the Bills come out on the right side, at least for us in this game, and to see them get a win, it's just a relief. It's a weight off the shoulders. It's narratives that now have to be put to bed because of this year, because of how it ended. And now we go up against another team with another narrative to beat. So, John, what's your opinion just on that fact of like, you could talk about whether it's just the discourse itself or maybe from week 4 to now, just in general about your feeling after this game finally being over and this finally being put to bed.
I mean, to me, that was such a measuring stick game for the Bills. And it feels weird to say that this late into the season, right? We're talking about the divisional round. We know that that's going to be a hard fought game. But like you're saying, you want to be able to expect or hope for these 9-point dominating wins. It's like we did that in the wild card round. We did that. We did what we were supposed to do in that situation in the first round of the playoffs. They scored a bomb to my Oregon boy Troy Franklin, which when I started texting about immediately,
literally right after.
For anyone that listened to us last year before the draft and stuff like that, Franklin was a name that I really wanted for Buffalo, being an Oregon guy. Joe messages me as soon as that. He goes, of course it was Franklin. I'm like, yeah, I know. That sucks. Of course it was. But other than that, first series touchdown, and then we shut them out, wiped the floor with them, put them to bed early. That's what you expect to see from a dominant team going against a wild card team, which we were and we showed. This was a heavyweight fight between two of the best teams in the NFL, where if Baltimore was in the NFC, they're going to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. I think that they would handle Philadelphia. I think that if this team was in that conference, they'd be a Super Bowl team. This was a big time fight of a game, especially that defense, the way they've come on in the second half of the season since week 10, the shift in personnel that they had, putting Kyle Hamilton back up at safety, did wonders for them. They were the top defense in the NFL in everything from week 10 until we played them. And we still were able to lean on them, play the game that we wanted to play, not get one dimensional, not have to rely on Josh going hero ball all the time. It was still quote unquote Buffalo Bills football against a great team and a great defense. And that is why I'm so hyped. That is the thing that I walk away from that game going, if we can do what we want to do against that defense, we can win it all. It's possible. We are definitely a caliber of team if we show up and play the right way, the type of game that we want to play, not make the mistakes, which we've been so great at not making this year. This is a team that can win the Super Bowl. And that is, God, it feels so good to say, and it's hard to say, and I want to knock on wood for saying it. I'm going to. But this team is, they can do it. They have the pieces that on all levels.
Yeah, they absolutely can. And, you bring up some great points and talking about the way that they were able to kind of handle the game. And again, I don't want to say they fully controlled it because I do think Baltimore, despite being down a bit, were actually making a surging comeback in that second half and were just a drop away from tying the game. So I don't want to say control fully, but when you talk about some of the factors into this game that breed optimism for me, when you talk about Kansas City and potentially furthermore, hopefully, I think about the lines of scrimmage, and I really think about the offensive line. And just again, I made this point a few weeks ago, but how sustainable it feels now for the Bills to actually win in the playoffs with this approach that they have. Because you look at the box score of this game, but even if you were, not just box score and looking at the film and watching this game itself, you see the fact that Josh Allen very seldom had to put the cape on. There were a couple times in the red zone where they turned to his legs because you do that and it works. But Josh didn't feel like he put on a 13 seconds level performance where he was just putting the team on his back nonstop throughout the whole game. It was a kind of reliant on game script and controlling the clock and making sure that we can move the football on the ground and testing the physicality of a very physical front and succeeding multiple times. And when you talk about that, paired with the fact that this defense was opportunistic and kind of banking on Baltimore, running the ball, potentially making mistakes because of the weather element, and maybe just hoping that they could turn the ball over in any capacity, that to me is, in my opinion, sustainable. It's a world that you can live in because this Bills rushing attack has gone up against two straight defensive lines that are extremely talented with a prolific and especially diverse group of bodies and strength and push that they can get as pass rushers, as run stuffers. The fact that you had this level of success against them should make you encouraged. Does that mean it's a guarantee they could do it to Kansas City? No, but they had success in the last matchup, and I think they could in this one, even though their front is really freaking good. And that makes me happy. And I think just looking at week 4 to now and talking about the evolution of this Bills team in general and kind of where I was going before is just seeing that this team got bullied on the ground and got completely manipulated to whatever that offense wanted to do to now. Yes, it got ugly in the second half and things started becoming a little unhinged, but this Ravens team punched themselves in the mouth a bunch of times and the Bills capitalized and, pushed them into mistakes, some pressures that led to some errant throws, some disguises that led to some errant throws. Obviously, Lamar making the mistake in the fumble and Von Miller's return. All these things factor into what I feel was kind of a metamorphosis for this Bills team as far as narrative, as far as team structure and confidence building. And now that they have this identity of being able to punch you in the mouth with their rushing attack, I mean, what it could do for their pass game, like it did with Denver towards the end of that game, that's a huge factor and something that I think I could take into this AFC Championship game, feeling confident and just happy to say that they got this win and got over that sticking point that they reached the past couple of years and hopefully can get to further heights this year. But John, any final thoughts on that before we go to the next topic?
Yeah, I kind of just want to bring attention back to what you said there about the offensive line, because to me, that's arguably the biggest key to this team's success and their growth this year is the offensive line. Spencer Brown, dude, fucking hats off. Like his development as a right tackle and becoming an elite right tackle is such a big deal to this team. What they're able to do is great. And sacks are partially offensive line, partially scheme, partially quarterback. It takes everybody to be, in the right frame of mind and playing cohesively in order to not give up a lot of sacks. And obviously Josh Allen's ability to escape and get the ball out certainly helps that. But this team holding Denver's front, which accounted for the most sacks in the NFL this season, to only one. They got one on Josh Allen. And other than that, that was it. Being able to stop that pass rush and then being able to go against the best run defense in the NFL and still be able to lean on your ground game and get your yardage and stuff like that. It's like this offensive line has shown that they can do it a variety of different ways against whatever you throw at them. And that to me is just like a beautiful, beautiful thing going into hopefully these final 2 games of the season. It's awesome. I love the offensive line. I love watching them play. Deion Dawkins is basically split wide enough to be a slot wide receiver, and he's still not giving up anybody to come on the inside. It's fantastic. So yeah, love it.
The flexibility and what seems to be the fun this offensive line is having. But again, I'm an Aaron Cromer truther. I'm an Aaron Cromer stan. I can find any way to talk about him on the show and the development he's brought to this line that, look at Spencer Brown and the development he had and the conversations I was having, people on our network, people in the Bills sec were having 2 years ago to now. His metamorphosis, his emergence as a right tackle, the skill he has, the athleticism he plays with, the speed, the lateral agility he has. He's awesome. And I can't say enough good things about that. I was totally wrong about him, and it's it's just leading to such good things for a Bills front that now can go toe to toe with anyone. And that was kind of like, you talk about Spencer Brown, that was the vision, right? Like, was this guy had like elite measurables, like the RAS score was a perfect 10. It was just this awesome, like, grouping of traits, but can we actually mold him to be a fortified starting right tackle? And then
they
starts out ugly. Yeah.
And they did it.
Yeah.
And that is unbelievable to take this raw ball of clay and turn him into what he is now. Everyone's opinions 2 years ago are fair for that time. Like, the opinion of what he was 2 years ago is fair. What he's developed into, though, like, you have to allow players to develop. You can't just be stuck on your opinions of what they were coming out of college or as a rookie or whatever. Hats off to Spencer Brown for putting in the work, and hats off to the organization for working with him to develop into a great right tackle. It's like Josh Allen. Like, we all know that he was super raw with a giant arm, but accuracy issues and bad mechanics. Like, that was who he was. And then he put in the work and he cleaned up his mechanics and he worked with biomechanic like experts and did all this stuff to become an elite quarterback. Like, just the work ethic that it takes is amazing. And it's just great to see. I love it. And again, Aaron Cromer, I can talk about him every day of the week, twice on Sunday as well. He's awesome.
Absolutely. And if they pull it out on Sunday, I mean, I'll talk about him again. And if they win the Super Bowl, I'll argue that the statues that should be built, he should get one. But let's center it around a little more of Josh Allen's performance in this game, because even though the numbers weren't earth-shattering and nothing pops off the screen when you look at it, still just an effective game, an efficient game. I thought very few mistakes that were literally just on him were made. And really one of the ones I could think of off the top of my head was just the missed deep throw to Hollins, the whole shot down the field, but obviously comes right back and redeems himself with a downfield shot to Shakir, which ended up being a crucial play because that, on 3rd and I think it was 8 at the time, you're talking about keeping that drive alive when you're down 7-0, going and tying it, and then maintaining that tie and that turnover leading to you taking the lead. So, John, I'm curious, just things you liked about Josh Allen's performance this past Sunday that, caught your eye.
I think just what we're seeing from Josh, and it doesn't matter the stage, right? This was the biggest stage of the season so far. And what we're seeing from Josh is the same thing that we saw from Josh in blowout wins in the regular season, as when he was playing against Denver, as whatever. We're seeing a calm and confident Josh Allen who understands the scheme, understands when people are open and where they're going to be open, understands where his check down is, understands that his offensive line is going to do their job, and he just looks composed and controlled. And to me, that's the evolution of Josh Allen. Like, the Superman Josh Allen is great, and he can put the cape on when he needs to, and he might need to on Sunday. We'll see. But his ability to just play smart and calm and composed and take what's there and make a good enough play when it needs to be made. Sorry about that alarm. And like you said, the 3rd and long situation to Shakir, he can still do that, and he can do it with the best of them. But most of the time, it's this ability to control the game. Josh is now trying to control the game, not just control every play and win every play. One of the biggest things that this team has developed into is being a 55+% rush team. They're a run first team, and they're a team that wins by dominating the time of possession. And it is soul crushing to the opponents. When you're going against guys like Lamar, against Patrick Mahomes, against these guys, keep the ball away from them as long as possible. You want to control the line of scrimmage, control the game clock. You want Josh to make smart decisions that keep the ball moving, but you don't want to be this high-flying team that necessarily scores in 30 seconds and then gives the ball back to Mahomes. You want to be able to control it and play it right. That drive before halftime, where the offensive line just dominated Baltimore's defense, 3.5-minute drive to get down there. Yeah, okay, Keon's pass interference call, whatever. We'll chalk that up as a makeup from the phantom holding on Deion Dawkins.
Thanks, Trey White, even though that wasn't your fault.
Exactly. Whatever it is, Deion Dawkins got, called for a holding that would have set up a 3rd and short and instead became a 2nd and a mile or whatever it was that didn't even exist. It was a beautiful cross chop, whatever. That drive, though, to be able to orchestrate it, to go down there and to cap it off with a touchdown with 13 seconds or 11 seconds or whatever it was, where you left nothing left on the bone for Lamar Jackson. That is playoff football. That is winning football. That's the evolution of Josh Allen in this offense, and I am here for it. And that is what makes me think that he can play Patrick Mahomes' game, because Mahomes has done that. He's learned the art of winning. He's learned how to just be a soul-crushing villain Josh Allen can do it too, where he can now take your soul or has the ability to put on the Superman cape and do the impossible if it's needed. And that is like, that's everything. That's been the emergence of Josh Allen that I'm completely here for.
I'm here for it too. It's what I've wanted to see. It's something that, again, for the past few years, I have seen Josh Allen's game and said, it's awesome that you get the Superman traits, but how sustainable is it to live in that world versus if we can build him up to be more patient at the quarterback position where he's not having to force things, but taking what's given to him with a stable running game. And then the cape comes on when you need it to come on, not all the time, but rather let's turn to it in a pinch or let's turn to it because we can. That is the world you want to live in as a Bills fan when you watch Josh Allen. And this game is a great representation of that. They outran, or at least had more rushing attempts than passing attempts in a game where Josh Allen put up very modest stats. And I still sit here and say it was one of his most composed games I've watched him play. Yep. Nothing was forced. Nothing was panicked. Nothing was taken with any craziness or, the almost lateral that thank God he didn't try, but you saw damn well he wanted to try and he was fighting the demons on that play. Josh is composed, and that's the game that you can play in the playoffs. And it's something that, like, even though people in the future will see the stat line and punish him for it, game context and game script tells me that's what I wanted. I mean, for Josh to be able to have a more modest stat line, but still be able to control the game because of the threat of his legs, because of how they schemed it up, because of the rushing attack being effective, because of those chunk plays he was able to earn when they did throw the ball. A nice ball to Samuel. I remember him completing the ball to Hollins towards the end of the game in that fourth quarter. Obviously a clutch throw to Shakir. He made the throws he needed to make. And sometimes when you're a quarterback in a game, there's a game plan that is not to phase you out, but rather it's not so much emphasizing you as it's emphasizing control and efficiency, and you just have to manage it. And honestly, we punish quarterbacks with that term game manager. I think if game manager is your absolute ceiling, then I can understand it. But really, for elite quarterbacks, you want them to be able to control games. You want them to manage games. I can think of several Patriots playoff performances where Tom Brady, and I know this is bad. I'm not trying to, I know people hate the Patriots, but this is the truth. There are plenty Patriot games where Brady had a very modest stat line because he didn't need to have the attempts. He didn't need to have the yardage or the touchdowns. It was, let's just get this damn ball down the field and score however we have to do it. And, with Josh on the ground and rushing the ball, it's just what you can do and still be successful. And it's a world that you can live in for the rest of his career. So I was happy to see it. I thought he played a perfectly fine game. Again, still sitting with like just under a 73% completion percentage, only 127 yards. Like, it was a modest game and it went well. And I'm happy about it. I'm willing to live in that world. I am hoping that when they go up against the Chiefs, if they run the ball well on the ground, that they don't have to force it to Josh. And that's a thing too, watching this game and seeing kind of the discourse, because there's some in our chat, which I understand. I would have liked to see Joe Brady dial up just a couple of more things downfield, but I could think of the second half. I think it was the second drive they had where Josh Allen, they schemed up a play action shot. It was covered. So he takes the screen and just tries to get a couple of yards, and they tried handing the ball off. And then, they tried handing the ball off again. It didn't work, and he had to pivot and course correct. And, on their third drive, they started moving the ball a lot better. And I think that's an example of, again, we're going to just make sure that unless we have to do it, we want to control this game. And Josh is going to be a part of managing it. And Josh is not going to try and take the cheese they lay on the trap, but rather it wasn't there. Let me be smart with this football because the turnover is going to kill us right now. I want to live in that world, and I'm happy to live in that world. So I was pleased with his performance. John, do you have anything else you want to add before we move on to specific contributors on offense and defense?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. I want to live there too. That's the Josh that I want. And quite frankly, that's not the secondary to take your shots on. Like, that is a very, very talented and scary secondary. Kyle Hamilton's range is ridiculous. Like, you got to be careful. And I think especially in that game, when Baltimore's already made their mistakes, you don't need, like, at that point, you're like, okay, we're already up in the turnover margin. We already have the ball for the last drive before halftime. We know we're getting the ball after the half. Like, you don't have to do the most. Like, I would rather this game than Josh Allen have 300 passing yards and 2 interceptions. Like, I would much rather have this game, which was controlling it and putting the squeeze on them and going against the number 1 rush defense in the NFL that was allowing just over 80 rushing yards per game. And our running backs, not even including Josh, totaled 124 rushing yards against them. 44 more rushing yards than they averaged in the regular season just from our running backs. That is dominance like that. I love to see, and we were able to do it. And that is a great thing. I think it was exactly the game that they wanted to play. Yes, the defense let it get a little too close there at the very end, but they held their own. They created the big plays and the big turnovers and did what they do.
Yeah, and I'm going to give flowers to Lamar Jackson because I thought he played a really nice second half, even despite the turnovers. But that performance of his is exactly what you're referring to. Everyone looked at the stat line and they were like, well, he outplayed him. And it's like, well, first off, comparing their performances to me is just, I understand why people do it. They had different approaches to the game, and game script leads to different scenarios. They had to throw the ball. Right? They were running out of time and they were running out of possessions after costly turnovers. The Bills wanted to squeeze them and bleed them dry. So Lamar has to throw it. And they did well once they started committing to that through the air, and they weren't forcing and pressing, but rather, Bills playing zone, and they were able to find some soft spots. Mark Andrews, despite, the many mistakes, was actually navigating the field quite well. And it's a tale of two stories, but ultimately, again, that's why you can't just rely on the yardage and why you can't just rely on the numbers themselves, because it tells me a different story. If I see one quarterback with that many more yards, that many more attempts, that many more yards per pass, but they lose the game. Because all that means is, okay, we were playing from behind and we didn't have the time or the luxury to continue running. Although I will say, I did think the Ravens got away from it a bit, like at least with Derrick Henry. It felt like they could have maybe leaned on it a smidge more. But when you're the Bills and able to run the ball in that defense, and kind of something they probably weren't expecting to be as efficient as it was, it probably leads you to press more. It probably changes the mentality of, oh, wait, they're moving the ball on the ground. Like, we now need to throw, because I don't think we're going to have enough time to maintain a long drive. And also the long drives that we've been having, we've been turning the ball over. So I got to give, I'll take the high road, because I know the discourse has been toxic, but putting a bow on Ravens talk, they're a good team. Lamar Jackson's a stud, and I love him as a person, as a player.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be a competitor for a long time, but I'm glad that in this matchup, the Bills overcame the difficult matchup on paper, and we're able to move on. And just talking about some of the more specific things, John, as people in our chat are complimenting your piano. As Spin says, look at this fancy guy with a fireplace next to a piano in the daylight at 8 p.m. And
oh yeah,
Sarah,
you want to know why?
That's a nice piano.
Maybe we should go with the brick wall, or maybe we should switch to something else.
Do you have an underwater theme?
I don't have an underwater theme. I'm in my basement right now with a green screen behind me, guys. I'm in Michigan. It is cold. It is dark. It is snowy. It is not a pleasant place to be right now. Where the bench would be better for the piano. You're right. But yeah. What were we even talking about? I got distracted by the piano. Specifics, offensive contributors. Is that where we were going?
Yeah. Offense and defense. Just the final thing I want to discuss about this game is really, in your view, for offense and defense, what you think, whether it was players, whether you think it was concept coaching, however you want to shake it. What do you think were the biggest contributors as far as how the Bills were able to get away with this game? We've talked about OL a bit. You're welcome to keep going in it, but anything you think we might not have brought up either that you could see as a massive impact in this game?
I really think the offensive line was the story of the offensive side of the ball. I do. That was huge. Their ability to continue to run on a great run defense. I'll go to the defensive side though, and something that was tremendous of them to be able to do, one, to have the guts to change your attack and your formation and your personnel grouping, and two, to have the ability to execute it. Like, that is great coaching from both Bobby Babich and Sean McDermott. The very first play of the game, and I was looking at some numbers last week, and I saw that Lamar Jackson was like 26th in EPA per pass when it was a 5-man front and man coverage behind him. That's very low in the NFL. And I was just looking at things, and Dorian Williams is so athletic, and his ability to potentially help with this athletic duo of Lamar Jackson and this. And I think that I even saw like Eric post some stuff about recommending that they do this too. I'm not saying I'm some genius and I'm the only one that thought of this, but recommending that they go to a man heavy scheme with a 4-3 personnel grouping, throwing some 5-man fronts up there. Recommending it is one thing, but that the coaching staff to be able to look at it, say, this is going to help us, we're going to implement it, and the players being able to completely adjust their alignment and what they do, that is great coaching. And to have that ability is massive, and it worked. They came out on the very first play of the game. It was a 4-3 with Dorian Williams up at the line of scrimmage, and Derrick Henry went for like no gain or 1 yard or something very, very short. And I was like, okay, That's the plan. That's what they're bringing to this game on run specific plays in particular. Dorian Williams was on the field on run first type plays and was a massive contributor in like blowing stuff up, in penetrating where it needed to be, in turning Henry back inside, in chasing him down, in collapsing on Henry. And that was the game plan here. Collapse on Henry and make Lamar beat you, which I can't believe was their thought. Like, he's the most lethal running quarterback like ever. And to be like, we want him to beat us is they must have just liked their matchups better, because they're like, well, Derrick Henry's 250-pound freight train. So if he gets rolling, that's bad news. But we think that we can do something with Lamar. That coaching ability and that change is so impressive, to be willing to adapt your scheme. And I take that away as being a huge plus in that game. But not only that, this coaching staff knows how to game plan and adjust on the fly when they need to, because we've seen the second half adjustments throughout the course of the season if they need to make them. They're great at adjusting at halftime. But to tailor this game plan to that makes me really happy. And it also makes me really happy because if we do get to the Super Bowl, we're going against teams with great ground games and super athletic quarterbacks. It's going to be either Jalen Hurts or it's going to be, oh my God,
Jaden Daniels.
Washington. Thank you, Jaden Daniels. Total brain fart. Super athletic mobile quarterbacks with great ground games and strong offensive line. It's like, okay, we've shown that we can handle that type of attack on offense. I'm hyped. Like, I'm stoked. Like, what they were able to show on defense to me was huge for this game and huge for my thoughts on this team's ability to potentially win it all.
Yeah, we've talked about the OL, ad nauseum at this point. So I think it's fair to just give them one final, hey, awesome job. I am such a fan of this unit. But pivoting to defense, just to kind of branch off that, because that's where I was going to go with it too. I absolutely loved the fact that they ran more base in this game and went with more 4-3, because as people were talking about all week long, that could be a solid counter to the fact that if you don't want to sit in base nickel because you're worried about size, even though I think Taron Johnson can defend the run well, but rather let's mix it up and just try to force them to really beat us if we show a more physical front. That was an awesome thing to see, because one, it worked for the most part. One of the things that I was really worried about in this game, John, was first down defense and whether Lamar was going to be able to play with shorter sticks or not, because to me, the Ravens are so much more lethal if their ground game is working on early downs, because then you throw defenses out of whack. Pittsburgh is a good example. They didn't know who to defend. They were just manipulating them with their eyes and the reads, the different options Lamar had, and all of a sudden things fell apart. If you maintain composure on first down and take the threat of Henry away early, that all of a sudden flips it back to the Ravens zone, where it's like, wow, okay, so you actually can stop us, and now we have to get a little more creative to get these early down yardage. Again, not every single drive. There were times where it worked for the Ravens, but I still think the Bills knew that and wanted to go with that approach and just get those punches when they could. So that was one. But two, it shows adaptability from the coaching staff. It shows a willingness to say, hey, I know that this offense can just completely methodically destroy us if we're not careful, because they are a power running team with a lot of big bodies, one of the best runners in the game, a great fullback, and a really good downhill offensive line. So rather than just sticking with what I run because I run it, I want to modify this as best as I can in rates that I have not seen all season, as far as 4-3 base and pressure, and send it at them and just play their hand, because this is a playoff game and I don't want to get got. That's a beautiful thing. And McDermott, from me, from everybody, has gotten critique for a lot of things. And, you guys all know what I've said on the show about him. I've even been willing to move on from him. But I sit here and I smile at the fact that I'm seeing a coach's really willingness to kind of learn from the past and do as much as he can to improve for the future. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but I feel more comfortable with McDermott in a playoff game now than I did last year. Because, again, a game like this where it's, I don't want to run my scheme, or I'm not, sorry, that's the wrong way to put it, but rather like, I'm not just going to run nickel because we only run nickel. I want more linebackers on the field and I want it more often. And to get it at a 60-40 rate, to blitz at a higher tick, to try and just take every single bit of space away, I love seeing it. And they got the win because of it. Because even though you could say they got softer in the second half or got punched a little more in the second half, the Ravens started getting a little more productive. It's the fact that they had to, because they were down by a wide margin, because they weren't consistently producing on offense, weren't finishing drives. And apart from the game plan you still had the aggressive tendencies of this defense to either miscue Lamar and get him to throw an errant ball or something that was inaccurate or something he couldn't get away with, or to generate a turnover. So bravo to really just the coaching staff for this, and bravo to, I want to say, the front and the linebackers. It wasn't a perfect pass rush game, and the 4-man pass rush does still concern me. But I thought as far as containing, hurrying Lamar up and the linebackers flying around, it was fun to watch. And, I don't know if they're going to play this rate of 4-3 against Patrick Mahomes. Probably not. I think they want to go nickel if they can a lot more, but still just something cool to see for future matchups with McDermott and a defense that, even if it's not a finished product, in my opinion, one that I still think can be effective. So I'll turn it back to you, John. Anything else you got?
Yeah. Can we talk about the linebackers?
Yes.
Just
please.
Bernard and Milano, dude, Milano looks like he's healthy and he's getting back to the Milano that we know and love. And he finally is turning it on. Like those first few games back, he looked a step or two slow. It looked like it wasn't quite there. A little bit of rust coming in, stuff like that. But to see Milano come on, and I can't remember who it was that caught the ball, but Milano was running him down from behind. It was kind of a blind hit a little bit. And he just stonewalled him with his shoulder pretty much and put him into the ground. Having that physical presence back at our linebacker position with him and Bernard, both very physical linebackers that are very, very smart, that can identify what's happening in front of them, that are in position, and that are also ball hawks, like Bernard being able to strip that away from Andrews. This linebacker duo is what we thought we were getting back in July. This is what we thought that we were going to be having this season. Having them back is massive. And it's incredible to see, and it makes me so happy, because I remember Ravens fans all week saying that Bernard, Milano, and Taron Johnson weren't going to be difference makers in the game. Well, what a difference the defense was. It couldn't have looked more different than it did in week 4. Mm-hmm. This is a complete unit, and those linebackers rule it all. They are the guys that set the tone, that identify what's happening, and get everyone lined up where they need to be. And they played a great game. Not perfect. You're not going to be perfect against Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and the 7-person, 300-pound package that they throw out there. But a really, really good game, and I'm super excited about having them here going forward.
I am too, and I really hope Milano's good. I know we're still waiting to see any updates because it was kind of vague on what ended up happening at the end of the game. And obviously, Benford and Rapp, it sucks that it's happening now. I'm hoping for the best. Saying Rapp is day-to-day, and not ruling him out outright makes me feel a little bit better, but day-to-day could mean weeks in Sean McDermott's vernacular, with the way he uses that word. And then Benford, I'm hoping, kind of gets through it, because obviously you need him on the field, and I want to have him there because the boundary options for Kansas City with Worthy and Hopkins are real. But yeah, the linebackers were awesome. Again, it's all a part of that philosophy with the 4-3 and giving them an opportunity to kind of come downhill and really make it work. But I want to give more flowers to the D-line. And again, I'm not talking about it from a pass rush standpoint, because I do think there was something left to be desired as far as finishing up. They did get a lot of pressure on Lamar, though. And sometimes that might just be what you want out of them, because flustering Lamar and getting him to go off script, even though it can be dangerous, can also force errant issues or errant turnovers. So I'm willing to live with that world when you play him. It's something the Bills have done against him in the past, but really in run defense. And I saw, I think it was Spin, brought up AJ Epineza, who I know Eric has highlighted and people on our network have highlighted, but the front and specifically the edges of this D-line. I'm talking about Von Miller when it came to pressuring and making some plays in run defense. Greg Rousseau, who is going to do that, including that goal line stand where Rousseau had a huge play. And then AJ Epineza, who made multiple big plays on Derrick Henry, on Lamar. This line came into this game with a lot of questions about it, and myself included, was worried about size, worried about being able to go toe-to-toe with the line, worried about being able to maintain their gap integrity, and worried about them overall stopping the rushing attack for Baltimore. And I think, they didn't outright stop it, but they slowed it down enough. And in a playoff game with thin margins for error, where literally it can just go haywire for you if one thing goes wrong, that's all you need from them. And I was very pleased with the way they played and the discipline they played with. You talk about, we'll keep going back to the second half. Did things start to open up a little more for the Baltimore attack? Yes. But even then, At that point, they're playing from behind. You were in control. You were one touchdown sneak potentially away from putting the game away before ever going to that drive. Thankfully, it didn't bite you. But this defense should take a bow for a gutsy performance that, even if it had blemishes and bruises and bumps, game plan wise, I thought they executed pretty well, and that's all you can ask for. And that's the reason, in my eyes, outside of some really nice running and OL push, that they're moving on to the AFC Championship. So I'm happy that we could put this game to bed. We are done with Baltimore for the rest of the year, and now we turn our sights to Kansas City, another playoff matchup. John, here we go. It's happening again.
Yep.
I want to win it. I think they can win it, but I am curious, just before we get deeper into it, your general thoughts on this upcoming matchup.
What pisses me off the most about Kansas City is that they've been like the worst elite team ever this year. Like, it seems like they shouldn't win. And there were so many games that came down to weird fluky plays and blocked kicks and a toe being out of bounds and like just random stuff, and they just know how to win. And I think that takes a certain level of just excellence and dedication from Andy Reid and from Patrick Mahomes to just simply know how to win games. And that is okay. I'm going to talk about the officiating. We're getting into this because I keep seeing this from everybody.
Floor is yours. Have fun.
This officiating crew that we are getting, why is the name avoiding me right now? I had it. Clete Blakeman. Clete Blakeman has officiated 9 games for Patrick Mahomes in his career as the head official. Mahomes has a 5-4 record against him. Mahomes has not lost more games with any other ref officiating than he has with Clete Blakeman. There are refs out there that have like Mahomes is 7-0 with them as the official and stuff like that. This is not that situation. Now, the thing about Clete and his crew is they are incredibly flag happy. They throw the most flags in the NFL for the most penalty yards per game in the NFL. And that sucks because I don't want this to be a laundry game where we're just seeing tons of flags all over the field and maybe Lamar connects on a 40-yard touchdown and it comes back because of some holding call. Like, I hate penalties. But it's not like Clete Blakeman is automatically some giant advantage for Patrick Mahomes. Not only that, the last game that Clete Blakeman officiated for Patrick Mahomes was Christmas Day 2023, the last regular season game that the Chiefs lost other than earlier this year to Buffalo. It was the game against the Raiders. It was a low-scoring game. Patrick Mahomes is getting bullied in that game, and he didn't get the benefit of like a lot of really borderline calls that typically might have been given to him by some other officials. I don't see this as being some crazy official advantage where you just go into this game thinking the league loves Patrick Mahomes and they're going to give him every call. Like, that's just not been proven by this officiating crew. And also, I kind of just don't want to hear that, like, period, because it's a cop out and like you can only control what you can control. If an official is going to call a flag, if you call a penalty, he's going to call a penalty, whatever. But control what you can control and win the game. And like we did in week 11, where we went out there and it was a double-digit victory. That 4th and 2 26-yard touchdown run was just chef's kiss, and one of the reasons why I think Josh Allen should be the MVP this year. But the officials, you can't just go into this thinking that the officials are going to benefit Patrick Mahomes, because I just don't simply think that that's the case.
Yeah, so some great points set there. This is the only thing I'll say about officiating, because I'm not a fan of pointing to officiating at all, only for the reason that what will often happen is when a team is winning more, they are more likely to be under the microscope when a call goes their way than they wouldn't be. And what I think happens now is the Chiefs are getting that, like, that Patriots treatment that we looked at Brady and co getting, and we were like, what the hell? We're just more angry at it happening because it leads to a lot more success for Kansas City, even though I will admit there are some calls I'll see and just scratch my head and say,
oh, sure,
come on, like, no shot. But Bills also benefit from some calls like that too with Josh Allen. I've seen it. So it's not like we don't live in that world too. I think the NFL likes protecting their quarterbacks. And when you're talking about the best in the business right now, it's Mahomes, it's Allen, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Joe Burrow, I would say, and others. And when I look at that, I say, yeah, they probably don't want these guys getting hurt because then the product suffers. So probably some weight to that. But in this game specifically, one thing I had said, and I think, you bringing up Blakeman and the amount of penalties he throws, I think they're under a microscope. Officiating is under a microscope in this game, because when you have whether it's justified or not, I'm not giving my opinion on it as much as I am saying there is objectively a narrative about the penalties coming with Kansas City. I do think that this is probably the solution of, okay, you don't like the fact that they are getting penalties or that things are going their way and it seems like one way or another, or I'm sorry, going more in favor of one way, then let's just put in this flag happy crew. Let's try our best to just like really moderate this game and make it fair, because we are under a very large microscope right now. And, I don't know if I like that. I'm in the camp of I would rather let these players play unobstructed, because even though holds and penalties happen, it just sucks the same when you have it happen to you. And I don't want that case. I would like rather have it just be a smooth game where these guys can play. Whatever happens, happens, unless it's egregious, as opposed to every ticky-tack thing getting called. And I say that even more so because Deion Dawkins, our premier left tackle, has been getting the worst holding calls called against him. And I don't think this is going to help that problem. And I don't think that this is a Bills team that is fully designed to play from behind the sticks. So if they are calling flags on Deion or Spencer Brown for holds that are not holds or very ticky-tack things, I think that is actually a potential disadvantage for a Bills team that in structure, I don't have as much faith in being as explosive, as opposed to when they are able to move on the ground and have shorter downs and distances. So whatever happens, happens, man. I hope it doesn't impact this game that much. We'll see what happens with it. Really.
I think that's totally fair about how penalties could potentially impact the Bills, because we have seen that. This isn't the offense where you have the like alpha guy where you're like, it's 3rd and a mile. All right, Josh, go to him and let's see if we can make something happen. Yeah, we have guys that can make plays and stuff like that, but this is a spacing offense. You know what I mean? This is a get guys open. This is creativity. This is stuff like that. And we saw it. Like I talked about it earlier, the phantom holding call on Deion Dawkins last week went from being, I think, 3rd and 2 to 2nd and a mile, if I remember it correctly. And we ended up having to punt instead of being on, like, I think it was the Baltimore 45-ish yard line and on our way for some points. So that stuff, if it sets you back, this offense, penalties can really derail their progress. This is a timing offense, a spacing offense, a methodical offense. And if you're back to 3rd and 16, and we have not seen Joe Brady call plays to try and be aggressive in those situations. He doesn't want that. Like, it's 3rd and 16 at your own 40. We haven't seen him be like, I'm going to dial up some crazy play where Josh Allen's going to roll and we have this like rail route down the sideline to try and make it happen. He's more content to be like, let's get it to one of the yak guys. Let's get it to Shakir on like a 4 or 5 yard pass. If he can break a tackle and pick up a first down, awesome. If he can't, we're going to punt it away. We're going to play the field possession or field position game with them. So I agree with that. I don't want to see a lot of penalties. Blakeman did the Jets game for us earlier this season, which was not a crazy high penalty game. One of them, it was a game where I think there were like 8 total penalties in the game. Maybe 5 of them went against Buffalo. That's not an absurd number. Like that's an okay amount, kind of an average game. So I'm hoping, like you said, because officiating is so under a microscope and there are these narratives out there, I'm really hoping that they just kind of went on this or they looked at this and they went, we're not going to put an official on it that has like a 7-0 record for Mahomes and draw that attention to it. We're going to put this neutral record where no one can really scrutinize us for intentionally giving Patrick Mahomes an advantage into the game. And then we're going to tell them, hey, try to dial it back and let them play a little bit. So we'll see how it goes early in the game. I think we'll get a big feel for it in terms of how flag happy this crew is going to be. And hopefully they're not. And we just get to see 2 of the best quarterbacks, if not the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL, go toe to toe and not have it marred by penalties.
Agreed. I really don't want penalties to be a blemish on what should be a very fun matchup. And John, let's get into that matchup. But before we do, everybody, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. If you're in our chat right now, maybe joined us late, feel free to drop a like on this video, share it with your friends who are Bills fans or football fans, maybe even Chiefs fans if they're interested in hearing a Bills perspective. Your view, your like, your share, your engagement, it means the world to me. It means the world to our network, and it helps us keep it going. And if you are interested in more Cover One content, check out the description for the link link to the One Pass. That One Pass for $60 a year is the lifeblood of our network and allows us to have access to all the resources that we are using on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute, second-to-second basis for all the content we create on this network, whether it's video, live shows, or written articles that we are putting out daily. Check them out. If you haven't, sign up for it. If you haven't, if you are interested, and we appreciate everyone who is an insider already in our wonderful community of like-minded Bills fans and football fans. To the topic at hand, John, the Chiefs matchup. And I am just curious, based on this team this year, based on the Kansas City Chiefs and the crazy record and crazy run they were able to go on, I have some opinions on what I would like to see in this matchup that are very similar to what I had when they played them in the last matchup. But I'm curious what you think is the key to winning this game on offense and defense, just based on this Bills team and how they're constructed.
Time of possession and win the turnover battle. That, like, to me, that's the recipe. It's been the recipe for the team all year. I think there was only one game where the Buffalo defense didn't generate a turnover. And I think it was Terrell Bernard was asked about it after the game to be like, is this a sustainable thought process? Is this a sustainable defense for you guys to constantly be borderline relying on these turnovers from the defensive side of the things? And he immediately was like, yeah, it's our identity. Like, it's what we do. It's what we try to do. It's what we're coached to do. It's what we go into every game with the intention of taking the ball away. And to me, that's been how Buffalo has been successful in the biggest games this season. It's what they did to Baltimore. It's what they did to Kansas City back in week 11. You know, they won the time of possession battle 34-25. Like, they controlled the clock. They ran the ball better than Kansas City ran the ball with 104 rushing yards to 78. And they had 2 interceptions to Kansas City's 1. It's just, that's their recipe for playing winning football and control the line of scrimmage. Like, and that just goes hand in hand with controlling the time of possession, control the line of scrimmage, keep it safe, keep the ball moving, and take the ball away on defense.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the scheme that you have going into any matchup of Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think there's anything else that could really be added to it that's any different. You really have to dictate this game at the line of scrimmage, because that's going to be the factor in how you're able to keep the Chiefs offense off the field, and more importantly, remain in your identity as an offense. And I'm not saying you can't throw wrinkles here and there with your passing concepts or things you might not have thrown before, but the ability to be flexible on offense will stem from dictating at the line of scrimmage. And each front you faced in these past 2 matchups is talented, and there is no drop off here when you're facing Kansas City, who has, really solid interior depth, debatably the best defensive tackle in the league, who's a multiple guy, can go all over the line and wreak havoc. You're talking about Karlaftis, who's played really well in this playoff run, Omenahu, who's really good. There is so much to like about a Chiefs D-line when it comes to matching up with a rushing attack like the Bills. However, this Bills rushing attack has proven that they can get the push they need, and it needs to continue on Sunday, because the way you win this game is limiting opportunities for Patrick Mahomes, limiting opportunities for Andy Reid to scheme things up, make them play from behind. Because again, they're explosive, they're dynamic. The Chiefs, even though they don't put up the points, I promise you, the personnel on this team, especially in the playoffs, is still explosive. They just don't want you to think they are, because then the second you take your foot off the gas is when they'll try to strike on you. And unless you have perfect downfield coverage, which maybe the Bills do, I don't think it's a world I want to live in where I'm just inviting Patrick Mahomes to throw deep all the time. Rather, I want to, same way you got Lamar Jackson off the field, same way you made things controllable against Denver, you have to be able to run the ball and move and be physical in the line of scrimmage, and also build off that with your play action. This is something I wanted last week that I feel like they didn't do it enough, and I think you can do it a little bit more against this secondary that is still very good, despite it not being as sharpened up as last season statistically. It's one that I think you can get your opportunity to throw on. I want to see more play action. It's something I beat the drum of all the time, but with the way the Bills run the ball, it invites so much more opportunity to just drive the nail in further when you're leading in a game. When you have this chance to hold, ball fake, let Josh see the field, and if it's not there, take a dump off that could still get you like 4 or 5 yards, bleed clock, and still be a productive play. That to me is one, being able to keep your drive alive and give you a better position, but also showing a Kansas City defense you're not scared of them, even if you're playing on the road and in Arrowhead and in a massive playoff game with the narratives around this team. What you're showing is, hey, here we are. We got a lead, might be narrow. We might be behind a little bit. I'm still going to throw this ball on you, and I still want to make a stamp on this game. And, there was some comments that I do semi-agree with in our chat about Brady and getting a little hyper conservative at the end of the Ravens game. And I think that was something where it was like, we live by the sword, we die by the sword. We're just going to try to run until it doesn't work anymore. Then it stopped working, but then they pivoted on a drive where they kind of took advantage of the Ravens selling out a little more for Bill's run looks and had some passes off of it. There's one rollout from Josh to Ty Johnson that I thought was beautifully designed because they were selling a run look and then all of a sudden moved it for like 15 yards or something like that. I don't remember the actual count. I have to find it. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's the manipulation of the expectation of the Chiefs defense. They know we run the ball now. They know we want to grind games out. So take advantage of that and punch them in the mouth when they don't expect it. And if the deep shot doesn't exist, give Josh a chance to make a play with the ball in his hands, because you can, and he's done it. And he's been so much more patient and willing to take what's there, what the space between, where the coverage is, and who's sitting there idly. That to me is the answer. It's control this game in the trenches, be able to get pushed with the line of scrimmage on offense, and don't be afraid to get aggressive if you have a chance to do it, if you want to have your stamp on this game, because the Chiefs are simply not a team you can let hang around and get momentum on defense. You will regret it, and I hope that doesn't happen in this game. But John, turning it back to you, any other thoughts you have on this matchup, something you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, my comments earlier are oversimplified, but that's the overarching goal of the game, right? However, I do think the comments here about Joe Brady being overly conservative, the comments about the Chiefs secondary being one that we think that we can actually like that to me is, wait, put that back up again. I didn't see it.
What was it? It's okay. This is just spin.
Yeah.
It's spin being spin.
Yeah, exactly.
Love you, spin. Thank you.
To me, though, I do think that the Chiefs secondary is one that you can dial stuff up on. I think this is one where Joe Brady, I think he empties the bag. Like, we've seen him at times this year call very creative game scripts. And typically it's when he thinks he has the run game going and when they need the big plays. We also have seen him get a little too conservative. And I really want him in this game. I want him to just go for it, because with the Chiefs, if you get this down to 5 minutes left and it's a 3-point game, that is the Chiefs game. That is what they want. And we can still win those games, but that plays into their wheelhouse. They have been in these one-score games all season long. They want to do that to a T. They want to be able to grind it out and play the game of, well, if I scheme this up and then we get the ball last, we think that we can go and win the game.
Yeah.
I want Joe Brady to get a double-digit lead on these guys. I want Joe Brady to run this one out, like get it out in front by a ways. I want to see great play action designs. I want to be, yeah, exactly. This comment right here. This is what I'm talking about. You need to be up multiple scores late because they can just grind it out. I want to see great play action design. I want to see rail routes to the running backs, which I feel like have been kind of missing over the second half of the season. They worked really, really well early, but we haven't seen them a lot, I don't feel like, unless I'm just misremembering. But there's so many ways to get the ball to these guys in these 4x1 formations, which have been working so great, in these run looks that go to play action, in all of these different creative ways where we can generate chunk plays. I think this is a defense that you can do it against with very creative play calling and when they have to respect the run. And I think that we have both of those elements to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is a physical enough offense to get the respect that they have to sell out for it in a way. I mean, the Chiefs defense is disciplined. You know, they're great at generating pressure, and I do think they're going to be able to stop it at points. But if you just don't back down from that, I think that's a mentality that can carry over to the rest of your offense for this game. And that scenario you bring up is kind of akin to what you saw this Bills team do to Kansas City when they played them last on a 4th and 2. They were not afraid to go for it. They didn't want to settle for 3 and just have a narrow lead. They went for the jugular, and it paid off. Even if it was just a first down, it would have controlled the game enough to get him in a position to win it with a kick. So I'm saying,
and then Josh said, "Hold my beer." Like, and
yeah,
that's
and then Josh went nuclear.
Josh can do that, and he has done it to Kansas City before. We've seen him go nuclear, but now he's a composed nuclear that knows when to pick his spots. And I think that that's the difference in the Josh that we saw this year and why this game can be different.
Absolutely. And I want that again, because it's one thing to do it in the regular season, but the stakes are at its absolute highest. And yeah, a 3-point lead with 5 minutes left and it's 1st and 10. You know, I think there's a way to, one, be aggressive without being stupid, right? I'm not asking
Right.
them to go for 50 yards down the field if the look doesn't dictate it. Like if you're seeing a basic too high and it stays that way and the coverage is deep, going down the field if you don't have it would be a mistake. You don't want to force anything, but rather show some willingness to be dynamic. If you have been running on first down, like I said, build a play action off of it. If you want to go into empty on first down and try some chunk quick passes, do it. Like those are the things I want to see, because you can't indicate or show any semblance of fear to the Kansas City Chiefs. You just can't. That's how they capitalize. That's how they win. And you see so many teams that honestly had chances to win games against them just fall apart because they don't have the capability to separate themselves, or at least try to separate themselves when they play these teams. And that's the difference, is when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, you always have a percentage on a play to be able to expand your lead, to be able to get right back into a game. And it's for that reason that I think coaching scared is a mistake. And again, I understand where Joe Brady was coming from in the second half of this past game. And I understand, people's reservations. Like, I think there's a balance in, I get the calls. I think there could have been a little more of an uptick, but also they did adjust. Against the Kansas City Chiefs, I need to see just, again, more of a willingness to be aggressive without being dumb. And if you can do so, because there is aggression being stupid. I can think of McDermott's fake punt last year. Again, the look dictated that. I still don't agree with it. I still think it was stupid. And here I am now, a year later, praising McDermott because I think they've made the right decisions and they've been willing to go for it in opportunistic ways, not to a fault, but rather when the time calls for it. I think they'll do it again this week. And with that person across from you, with that coaching staff across from you, with this monkey that you simply can't get off your back because you've lost to them 3 times in a row, and it's a narrative and a cloud that hangs over your head nonstop, like, you got to be aggressive. It's the time to do it. You're up against a great team. You're up against one of the best quarterbacks ever at this point, one of the best coaches ever. It is time for you to just kill the narrative, and that aggression that you were referring to is the way to do it, and I hope they do. Back to you, John. Anything else you want to say?
Basically just that. Now, I'm not going to ever accuse like Joe Brady of holding something back in a playoff game, but maybe there was an element to that in the Baltimore game. Second half, you got a big lead, you're grinding the clock, you're being successful with your run, you're doing what you're trying to do. Maybe he just didn't want to empty the bag and show some looks, thinking like at this point, thinking ahead to next week, knowing you have Kansas City. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a little too optimistic for me to say, but there is no holding anything back against Kansas City. You unload the bag against this team and against this defense, because as soon as they know what you're doing, it gets difficult. Unless you're just imposing your will on the ground and you can continue to grind it out. And that would be a beautiful thing to see. But this is a team where you empty it out, you completely throw all the stuff at the wall. And like you said, aggressive but not stupid. If you call a play design and it's too high, like you're saying, and the look isn't there, take your check off. And if Kansas City is willing to just sit back and stay patient all game, don't force it. Like, you can't just force it down the field for the sake of forcing it down the field. I would rather go out and get 7-8 yards than have Josh just bomb it down there. Like, I think back to the Houston game early in the season, those play calls from Joe Brady when we had an opportunity, and every single one of them were just these weird, uncreative, deep shots that were low probability, that were very difficult throws, that didn't really serve much of a purpose in terms of manipulating the defense. And how Joe Brady has grown since then, and how the combination of him and Allen have grown since then, is such a big deal. This comment here about the all-out blitz, especially late in the game, Brady's going to have some answers against that all-out blitz. They're going to have some looks where you have a quick check, where you have something that can get the ball out of Allen's hand fast. And that's been one of his best attributes this year, is getting the ball out. It's not just him running around and creating backyard football like he used to. It is these quick looks. It is this ability to get it out. Between the pass blocking of this offensive line and what Allen has done this year, taking the fewest sacks in the NFL, I really like their chances against Spags. If he's going to bring the house, every time it seems like Josh Allen goes up to the line, there are 2, if not 3 options in his brain for what the defense is going to look like across from him. And I love that. I love that he can go up to the line, They're going to do like a hard count early with like 15, 20 seconds still on the play clock, see what they're in. He's going to move people around. He's going to check into this. He's going to move this over here. And you're going to have that all out blitz. And the next thing you know, it's a quick hit to Khalil Shakir, who takes it 15 to 20 yards. And it's like, those are the kind of things that make me so happy about this offense this year, and why I think they have an answer to whatever Kansas City can do. And that I don't feel like has been the case in the past, but I genuinely feel like this team has an answer on both sides of the ball for whatever it is that Kansas City wants to do. And we looked like the better team against them earlier this season, and we had some injuries in that game. And I think that we're going to look like the better team on Sunday. I'm calling it. The Bills are going to the Super Bowl.
I love it, man. I want them to go. I know the comments about the predictions thing. I just don't make predictions. I went to the Anthony Prohaska school of never make a prediction because I'm superstitious. So people could call me a coward for it. That's fine. I wear it. But listen, the blitz component is a great topic and great from our chat, and just you brought great insight into it. I think Josh's numbers against the blitz are what really make me comfortable too, because Josh has seen pressure and also has dealt with Spags plenty of times. And Spags has had times where he's able to hit home at one, but I think Joe Brady is very cognizant of, especially in the last matchup, knowing that this team can and is capable of doing so. They pride themselves on sticky coverage off of pressure, but it's a tall task when you're sending extra bodies to be able to like overcome the vacated space you leave behind. And therefore, in a late part of the game, that's really what I'm going to be watching too, because I have a lot of faith in their protection to hold up. I think Ty Johnson comes in on any passing down to be able to, fortify the edges for Josh outside of their tackles and give him just that extra second. Because the one thing that I really like about this Bills offense, which was kind of a knock on them going into the season from some people, but something that I think lends itself well to this offense against a blitz like Kansas City, is the fact that it feels like they have like a million slot receivers on this team. Because if you talk about commanding this game, you have to command it in vacated space in the middle of the field, or be able to take away any defender that drops off of a blitz and still replace it with someone who's shifty enough to get open. And I feel like there are three candidates that could do this effectively: Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and Dalton Kincaid. I think it's Dalton, and maybe even your running backs. If you actually decide to try and run maybe some two-back sets, that to me is paramount. Because I think now what happens is there is a consistent threat to beat the blitz, a consistent target to beat the blitz. I think Curtis Samuel might actually be one of the X factors of this game for that reason alone, because you have a shifty enough guy to create space in a short distance and to be able to recognize the pressure and have an outlet to throw to quickly, too, even that can generate yak. Those are the guys you got to be watching out for if you're Spags. And that's why it's all about the timing and the situation. And if you're the Bills, where you have a commanding enough lead, that pressure might be a desperation move, something to try and hit home. And all of a sudden you take advantage. So I think Spags is going to bring it. He does. That's what the Chiefs defense does. They're, again, a disciplined, well-coached coverage unit that has insane pressure, can win with four, can even win with three at times because you have Chris Jones, and win with the extra bodies. You cannot let that blitz dictate what you want to do. You have to make it so that they send it and feel helpless because you're capitalizing on the extra man and able to manipulate it with your receivers. And I am hoping that that is the case. Again, easier said than done. It's a great defense, and Spags is a great coach. But I love your prediction, John. And listen, I feel good about the matchup. I won't give you guys a score prediction again, but I feel good about it because I think on paper, these teams do match up at least pretty evenly. And I think with the Bills, this structure has been their direct how do I put this? It's been their plan to kind of get over the hump that is Kansas City. It's, hey, we knew that we were so downfield savvy and trying to get the explosive downfield play and air it out. And therefore, longer developing routes are more susceptible to get falling apart because of the extra time, the protection needing to hold up, our offensive line maybe not being able to do that in years past. And in turn, Spags and his blitzing and the pressure he can bring, and that maybe really disrupting what you want to do. Now you have a ground and pound smash mouth team that can be explosive, and they've proven that. And they did it in the last matchup. And, we had a Chiefs fan in our comments, thank you for watching, who brought up the fact that there was personnel out. And yeah, there were key contributors on this defense that weren't able to play, but the same tune for the Bills, who had injuries themselves and were managing to win it. I think the Bills can win it. I think the Bills just need to play with confidence to dictate in the line of scrimmage and to not fall behind. falling behind is a recipe for disaster. It's not how this Bills offense is meant to operate. So stay ahead. Try to be a little more diverse on first down too. That was one thing that kind of annoyed me was I felt like, again, leaning on your run game is fine. And I think there were times where they did try to get a little different, but some runs were predictable and the Ravens snuffed it out. And I wasn't a fan of it. And I think a little more mixing, even formationally, with who you have on the field, how you're aligning it, that to me is paramount against the Chiefs. Don't let them feel comfortable. Don't let them read your tendencies. Take control of the game, and I think you have a chance to win it and go to the Super Bowl as well. John, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Kansas City needed help from their own special teams and Houston missing 2 field goals in order to put up 212 yards of total offense and beat the Houston Texans 23-14. You can't spot them points and you can't spot them field position. Those are the 2 things that the Bills cannot do in this game. You can't leave points on the field. Tyler Bass, looking at you, buddy, got to knock them home. And you can't give up big return plays that put them into plus field position. So this is a 3 phases game that the Bills need to be strong in. Special teams, I think, is the weakest of the 3. There's no real debate about that. I think everyone would agree. They need to have a good day to make life as hard as possible on Kansas City. But great matchup. I think we're well suited for it. I think it's going to be fun. I'm stoked. It's great. Part 4 in this rivalry, and I just hope that we finally get over that hump, man. It needs to happen. Allen needs it, man. He needs it for his resume. We gotta get this monkey off the back to get him home.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just it's just like this dark, like storm cloud that sits on top of you. And I'm just like, it's raining and there's lightning. And it's like those old commercials where you see like someone walking down the street and they have it above them and everyone's looking at them with all concern. That's the narrative for like this Bills team against Kansas City, who again has just been the bane of their existence in the playoffs. And I want to just be free of this and break out of it and be able to move on to the Super Bowl and finally see what they got in a championship game. But I guess my final thoughts are really for defense too, because I feel like I didn't touch on it enough. Something like I said in the last matchup, they will get theirs against blitzing, but I feel like kind of taking your shots in unexpected times is when you should be doing it, which is a very basic thing to say. But I felt like the Bills did a pretty good job of that with setting pressure in different moments, especially when it was like more of a conventional run look and they just run blitz and tried to take out Derrick Henry behind the line or just minimize the amount he got. I feel like similar to Baltimore and similar to the strategy where you're trying to get Kansas City off the field and control the time of possession is first down defense. And I think early pressures in this game can absolutely help you do that. Milano generated a ton of pressure. So if he's good to go for this game, I think he's a huge component in being able to successfully blitz and then in turn change what you're doing and show the blitz look and drop into coverage, which is something that I think this Chiefs defense can do, this Bills defense can do, and whoever does a better job of it is able to control the game because all of a sudden that pressure is giving you that edge to be able to keep them uncomfortable and ideally force them into mistakes because maybe what you had designed and what you had schemed up to be quick gets covered and Mahomes has to hold the ball and a 4-man pressure forces off script or a blown up play and vice versa. You send the pressure, you disrupt them, and all of a sudden you're hitting home and it might rattle a quarterback. But I respect Mahomes. I respect the Chiefs. I know what he's capable of doing. This defense shouldn't blitz every single snap the same way that, I don't expect Kansas City to do that either, but rather pick and choose your moments, be smart with the times you do send pressure. And if you can hit home with it, if your linebackers are healthy and good to go, I think you will have success and be able to, have the difference be an errant pass or maybe even a fumble or something to get Kansas City off the field or even just hold them to 3 instead of a touchdown. That was something I had again when I had Adam on the show and we talked about the last matchup. It's something I think they could do again. Don't be afraid to send the pressure. I think you have the personnel now with the full health of your team to be able to do it quite exotically, creatively, and be able to be successful with it. And just one comment I want to bring up from Steve. Steve, thank you for watching. He did not run on every first down. And I hope it didn't come off that I was saying every first down. If I did actually say those words, that was my brain farting. But there was a lot of lean on first down. And I felt like towards the end of the game, there was a little more predictability, just a smidge. And that's why I was saying and trying to reinforce that I do think they did eventually, at least in the fourth quarter, I think it was their 3rd drive of the game, get a little bit better at mixing up the looks and being able to throw out of them more. But it wasn't every down. You are correct on this. And it's never that way. And I do like the point about we all need to chart and rewatch games. Our memories are not very good. That's a great point because that definitely happens to me. It's prisoner of the moment from watching a game and one play kind of magnifying in your head to take everything out of it. But really, it's never as bad as it seems if you're winning a game, 27-25, winning the
Sure.
divisional round. How bad could it be if you're winning and going to the AFC Championship? And it's nitpicking at that point because ultimately, if you could put 27 points up on a really good Ravens defense, you had a good day at the office. I wear that and I'm happy with it. So minor critiques, but I do understand Steve's point, and it was not every first down. And John, it's not every day I get to have you on the show, but when you're here, it's always a great time. As we wrap it up this evening, I very much appreciate you joining me. You are just a great guest, a great person to talk to. I appreciate your coverage, the work you do. Tell these good people in our chat or watching after the fact where they can find you. What's going on?
Yeah, A2Zsports.com. I cover your Buffalo Bills. I also cover the Oregon Ducks, my two loves in the football world. Find me over there. I write a ton. I'm writing daily. Also on YouTube, Buffalo Bills. What's the official handle of the YouTube channel? Let me look really quick. It's A2Z Sports. I'm a horrible salesperson. It is.
We do know it exists, though. That's the
I do know
part.
it exists. A2Z Sports Buffalo Bills is the official YouTube channel, dropping short videos over there, breaking down kind of some analytics and what to look for and matchups and all that kind of fun stuff. So, yeah, let's hang out. Joe, it was great to be here, man. I'm so glad I got to chat with you again. Happy to be here. It's going to be a good weekend. Let's have some fun.
Happy to have you, man. As Sarah says, hey, you got a game prediction, Joe? Sarah, I hope both teams have fun.
Oh, God. You fence sitter.
If this is the thing that turns me into a villain, then so be it. You guys are never getting a prediction from me unless I was held at gunpoint. And even then I'd be like, I don't know if I should. I might be superstitious. But no, everybody in our chat tonight, you guys were awesome as always. I always appreciate everyone joining us and giving their contributions. Love the insight from everyone. I know it is a nerve-wracking game. Again, the storm cloud, the dark cloud we have upon our heads, the like interstellar black hole that they can't seem to get out of, although Matthew McConaughey did actually get out of that. So maybe the Bills will too. It's a thing on their back that we have all wanted to see them get over for years. I am hoping they can do it, and I think they have a great chance to do it this Sunday. Again, that is a great team. Their pedigree speaks for itself, so I am not downplaying them, but I like the team that this Bills team has become. I like what they've built. I love the trenches. I think they play with a lot of aggression. And even if it's never perfect and they can get gashed at some point, they too can do the gashing and be opportunistic on both sides of the ball. And that should breed some optimism for fans going into this matchup. So while I don't have a score prediction for you guys, I am really excited for it. And I think the Bills can get it done. And hopefully next Tuesday, we are back here on the show to celebrate going to the Super Bowl. I am rooting for it. You are all rooting for it. And the people of the city, a city of winners, they absolutely deserve it. Or just Bills fans that are not in that city, like me. But everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Joe DeRosa, and you can find me on Twitter /X@show_DeRosa. Again, you are all wonderful. Feel free to drop a like on your way out. Share this with your friends if you are feeling so inclined. Stick around. In just 7 short minutes, you are going to have Mr. Anthony Prohaska go live with disguised coverage to detail the X's and O's of this upcoming matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. But for John Helmkamp, for myself, we are done, and we say good night. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. And as always, go Bills. Enjoy the game on Sunday. And let's hope we can finally get over the hump and go to the Super Bowl. Take care, everybody.